So I don't know if we're going to have anybody else popping on, but I think we'll get started. And so some of this information I know might be repeat. There's not, I have talked to a lot of different clients this week, as usual, trying to gather, what were the biggest pain points for people right now. And I think people really are struggling with the fact that today's May 1st and we are all supposed to be going back to work and things are supposed to be getting back to normal, but unfortunately that's not really what it's looking like at this time. So, my hope, for everyone who's on this call and whoever's listening to the recording is that we can band together and we can lift each other up and really look at ways to move forward together in this time. So today I've put together some slides for everyone. I am here to answer questions, be a resource, provide resources, and to connect you. If you want an individual call with me, I'm happy to offer a complimentary session. Please just reach out to Kristen at myassistant@elmtax.com, or you can reach our office 760-730-1817. So the 4 topics I'm going to go over today, because we did have a lot of people reach out this week who have now received the PPP loans, but to go over the accounting tips for that, and that is kind of a repeat, but I did want to go over that for anyone who hasn't already received their loan and will be receiving a loan and want to know what to do next, but also just what to do now with your business and what to do now moving forward. So that's the first topic I'm going to go over. And then the second topic, we're going to talk about update and next steps. I'm trying to glean all the information and just get the resources from the news and from I listened to all the webinars from the county, from the city, and the state to provide you with the most up-to-date information. And then we're going to talk a little bit about best practices if you do actually receive this loan. So what now? So really, we have to now think about how do we navigate through the next few weeks and maybe even months. I know that the governor came out and gave some news that people really didn't want to hear about the phases of how we're going to reopen things. And so, we're in phase 1 right now is the stay-at-home order, and that, only essential businesses are open, but they will be, lifting some restrictions on some businesses that are what they consider low risk. So really my encouragement to you is really it's a time to look at the opportunities that are out there, rethink your skill set and really think like, what do I have now? What can I work with? What skills do I possess? And who do I know that I can brainstorm with and or maybe partner with going forward, and just really retool and rethink what you're doing and how you work, because we may be in this for the long haul, even if we don't like it. And so I think, keeping positive and working together is really the best way to go. But really also thinking about, what are people's needs right now? And, find a need, fill a need is what they talk about in so many different business books. And so I would really think these things through and find the silver lining in the situation that we're in. So I have a couple of examples here for you about how you can shift and make a plan for the future for not only your business, but also for your life. So like I said, I've been talking to a lot of different clients, a lot of different friends about, what they're doing. And so I figured I would put out 3 examples of, things that you can do with the things that you have in your life, your skills and, whatever assets that you have, people that you know. So for instance, I have a friend who owns a window cleaning company, and they are completely shut down as of mid-March, no income coming in at all. They did apply for, the disaster relief, but as you know, it's, we've had a lot of people who haven't received the disaster relief yet. So they have been figuring out, okay, so what do? We have this great team, we've got this great business, we've been in business for over 15 years. How do we shift to make a plan for ourselves and make money? So they've been working to get a contract with the different cities, because as they do start opening up some other non-essential businesses and parks, because phase 2 is going to be some trails and parks are going to be opening up, which means the bathrooms are going to have to be highly disinfected. So they received a contract to go into public restrooms and other facilities to disinfect these facilities, and they may be making more money now doing this than they were cleaning windows. So that's a really great way to think outside the box, to use the skills that you have, the team that you have, to earn some money and to really shift your business during this time. So the second option, the second example that I have for you is I have a lot of clients who are hairstylists, and they, as you know, are one of the hardest hit industries out there. They have been completely shut down, making no money since mid-March. And so I have a couple of stylists who are really thinking outside the box. One of which, she started selling essential oils and supplements, and this month she made more money selling supplements to people than she did cutting hair, and has been in business for a really long time. Another stylist, she is a seamstress, and she pulled out her sewing machine, and she's been sewing and selling masks and donating them as well. But you know, really thinking outside the box, like, what are my skills? What can I do? But if you've been listening to the news at all, you know that you will be wearing a face covering from now on for quite a while. And so her thought was, well, why not have a face mask that makes a fashion statement? So she's creative, really wants to help people look good and feel good. And so she's now sewing and selling face masks. And then our third example for, you know, thinking about outside the box and how you can shift is I have a client who's an esthetician. She has the cutest little space where she had, you know, multiple stylists and other estheticians. She's thinking about, you know, how can I rent out my space in a safe way as they start opening up the different non-essential businesses. The other thing that she's been doing is she's been creating educational videos for other estheticians and for her clients about self-care. And she's been selling those to clients and really walking people through how to take care of themselves and their skin and so on during this time. So like I said, really think outside the box. It's time to look for opportunities. Think about what people really do need right now, and think about, you know, what skills that you have that you can utilize for your business going forward. So the second topic that I'm going to talk to you about today are updates and guidance on not only the economic injury disaster loans, the PPP loans, but also EIPs, the economic, the payments from the government, the stimulus payments, what people are calling them. So we've gotten a lot of phone calls about, you know, where is my stimulus payment? It is called an economic impact payment. So if you hear from anyone about a quote unquote stimulus payment, it's probably fraudulent. So don't give any personal information over the phone, over text, over email. The IRS will not contact you that way. So I've had many clients who saw their economic injury disaster loan deposits into their bank accounts without any that employed, you would receive $1,000 per employee. Self-employed, you receive one payment of $1,000. So this is a forgivable advance from the SBA, and what you need to keep in mind about the EIDL is that you cannot use this for the same purpose as the PPP. So if you receive both, please be very careful to document what you used each of the loans for, and we'll go into that a little more in detail in a minute. So as you know, the president signed a law last week, and the PPP received an additional $310 billion, the EIDL $60 billion in new cash, and as of Monday, the banks started processing applications again, and loans started getting funded again. So I just wanted to encourage you, if you have an application already and you have not received your funds yet, hang tight. The money is hopefully on its way. Do call or email your lender if you already have an application for either of these loans. Would be the next best step. So if you already have applied for either the economic injury disaster loan or the PPP loan, the SBA does say that they are processing applications that they've already received, first come, first serve. Do not try to reapply yet if you've already applied. And PPP loans, be sure that you check in with your lender to see where you are in their queue and to see if you need to reapply or not. If you haven't applied for either of these two loans, the EIDL, I checked this morning on the SBA page. I would suggest emailing them, disaster customer service at sba.gov, to find out what's going on. They do say that there is money still available. However, they haven't reopened their portal. So just keep checking back the SBA page under the disaster assistance. They have a separate page just for this. Regarding the PPP loans, if you have not applied yet, do apply. I know the news is not reporting great things, that there's not any money left, but I would suggest applying. I've had clients apply and be funded, quite a few clients in fact. So do have your payroll documentation ready to go, payroll documentation being your Form 940 and 941 W-3s before you start the application, so that you actually can upload all those documents when you fill out the application. Some other guidance on the Paycheck Protection Program loan is that our experience is that clients working with smaller institutions have already been funded, such as C3 Bank down in Encinitas. If you need a contact there, I have a contact, or Citizens Bank, we have a contact at Citizens Bank as well. Over in Oceanside, cdcloans.com, I've had several clients that have been funded through them, and Chase Bank is approving funding for some of our small businesses as well. Having a business relationship does help, so if you need a contact, please, like I said, reach out. Make sure you're contacting somebody directly at the bank to see if they can help push your application through. If you have employees, again, I reiterate, make sure you have your payroll documentation ready to go. If you're a shareholder employee of an S corporation, also make sure you have that payroll documentation ready to upload. And if you are an independent contractor and you file a Schedule C along with your Form 1040, I would suggest getting that completed or as close to complete as possible, so that you can upload that at the same time that you're uploading your other documentation, such as your 1099 forms that you've received for your income. This is not income for any 1099s that you pay out. Those people will apply for their own loans. So complete your applications, upload documents that you do have. If you haven't already done so, I would encourage you to continue to apply until they absolutely run out of funds. But there are still small banks that are accepting applications. My other tip for you is that not all lenders are created equally, so really talk with your local Chamber of Commerce if you haven't. Their websites are great. Carlsbad has been so unbelievably amazing. So check out the Carlsbad Chamber of Commerce website. They have great update emails that come out every single day. Also talk with your peers, other business owners who've been successful obtaining these loans to guide you through the process. So I wanted to just switch gears a little bit and talk about some FAQs about the economic impact payment. I don't know if you have or haven't received your payment yet, but the IRS does have a site which is updated daily. I will say that the site has been a little bit bumpy for most people. They've gone to it, they try to get information. Some people can't log on. Some people keep getting payment status not available. I will say that this morning I logged on to the site, and for the very first time for my husband and myself, I didn't get the payment status not available. So that was actually great news and kind of uplifting to see that. So I would just suggest going to, I think that there are so many Americans that are going to be getting this payments that the IRS is overwhelmed. And so just be very patient, because these deposits and checks are going out in phases. One of the things that you can do, if for instance you owed money in 2018 or 19 and you already filed, you can add your banking information on the site. And this is an advance of a credit for next year, 2020 filing. So if you don't get the payment this year, then take heart, you may still receive the payment in 2020 when you file. So again, I always include these links. Please go to the source for information, irs.gov. Make sure you're going to the site that has the GOV at the end. Don't go to any sites that say irs.com. Those are not the correct sites. Same thing with EDD or the SBA. Make sure that you're going to sba.gov or to edd.ca.gov. I did include the link for the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, which is the unemployment benefits for self-employed individuals. The portal is open. It has been a little bit rocky. I've found a lot of clients have called and let me know that the site has been freezing up on them. You will want to know what your net income for 2019 is before attempting to apply for these benefits. And if you have applied for the PPP loan, you cannot get unemployment and the PPP loan and have it be forgiven. So just, you have to be really careful about how these different benefit programs interact. If, for instance, you were receiving unemployment before you received the Paycheck Protection Program loan, I don't think that's a problem, but then once you have received it, put yourself back on payroll right away and no longer take the benefits from the government. Business.ca.gov is a really, really good site. They have so much information there. I really encourage you to do some research on your own. And Kristen just came in and handed me a question. So the question is, do you think the 8 weeks start with the date on the loan paperwork? Okay, so I actually have an answer for this. It's the day after the loans actually are deposited into your bank account. So I would start counting exactly 8 weeks from the day that you receive funding from your PPP in terms of how to count for when to spend the funds. And I'm going to get into that next. So if you have already received the PPP loan, congratulations. Yesterday, I attended a workshop put on by the Carlsbad Village Association, the Carlsbad Chamber of Commerce, and the Carlsbad City Government. And only 27% of the people on the call yesterday who had applied for the PPP loan had actually been funded. So if you have received it, then really congratulations. That's really great news. So I'm going to go over 5 tips for what to do if you have actually received this money already in order to achieve loan forgiveness. So as I just addressed, the clock starts ticking the day after the funds are deposited into your bank account. And you have to keep in mind that everything is going to be looked at on a cash basis accounting system. And so we'll talk about that under tip number 2. So accounting tip number 1, you absolutely need to have a good payroll system. That means that if you are not already working with a payroll company, get one on board right away, at least for the next 90 days, because you don't want to mess around with this at all. The 75% of the PPP loan needs to go to payroll costs over that 8-week period. So it's starting in the day after the funds hit your bank account. 75% of the funds need to go to payroll costs. And there's some things that specifically you cannot pay with those funds for it to be forgivable. So you really need to be careful about how you're tracking the money that you have received. So for instance, you can't pay the federal taxes, the employer, half of the payroll taxes, you can't use the PPP funds for those as well. So this is really about keeping your employees on payroll, which could include yourself if you're S corporation, if you're a sole proprietor. The three of the different payroll companies that I would suggest using. Gusto, if you really are a do-it-yourselfer, has a pretty good system. ADP has a really great back office, and then Payroll Hub is a local payroll company, and if you need a referral to Payroll Hub or ADP, I can absolutely connect you with the right people. And if you do want to use Gusto, I also have a contact for someone who knows Gusto really well and can help get you set up on it correctly. So tip number 1 is make sure that you have a good payroll system in place. You are going to need payroll journals. You're going to need the Form 941s, you're going to need some accounting system for how many hours your employees worked, not just, don't fly by the seat of your pants on this one. You're definitely going to want to work with a professional company. So my tip, the second tip is to have a real accounting system in place. I know a lot of sole proprietors love to use spreadsheets. Unfortunately, I would suggest at this point, it's really time to invest in some sort of simple accounting software, maybe Quicken. FreshBooks, I think, is free, and you can print out a profit and loss statement if you're using FreshBooks. I would advise hiring a bookkeeper at this point to do your books, just so that you know exactly where the money is going, so that you can print out those reports and provide your lender with those reports. Because it is the lender, not the SBA, that is going to be deciding whether they're going to forgive the loan or not. So within 60 days, so the 8-week period ends when you have the bank has 60 days to either deny or accept the documentation that you provide them to let you know if it's going to be forgivable or not. So you definitely, if you are in receipt of a fairly big PPP loan or even a smaller one, having it forgiven is huge. So be sure you have your documentation all together. So 25% of the funds can go to non-payroll costs. And these other costs are restricted. So you want to keep in mind that if you own a building, the interest on that mortgage is a forgivable expense, as is if you had any other loans in place, credit cards, the interest on those, if you had them prior to February 15th, you can include that as part of the 25% of non-payroll costs. Same thing with rent that you pay, and that's rent for your office space, if you have a storage unit, is my understanding, and or if you rent equipment for your business. All of those payments can count towards that 25% of funds. Same thing goes for utilities. They still haven't clarified what utilities are. However, if you look at the instructions for Schedule C, you'll see telephone is included as part of utilities. So extrapolating on that, I would think that internet and telephone, as well as gas and electric, water, trash, would all fall into the category of utilities. As I mentioned, be sure you're using some sort of accounting system. QuickBooks is excellent. Xero Accounting is another online accounting system. I don't really like it, but some people really do. Quicken would be something for a sole proprietor, and then FreshBooks is, I believe, a free accounting system that you can do online. So tip number 3 has to do with tracking the funds once you get them in your software. So first and foremost, I've heard from almost every banker that I've talked to is they really will want to see you set up a separate bank account for the PPP funds once you do receive them. I would suggest doing that just so that all of the funds spent out of that account that you can actually show. You can print out bank statements, you can provide those to the bank if they want them. The other lenders that are involved, I don't know if you bank at the same bank that you applied for your PPP, but a lot of people use the same bank that they applied for their PPP loan. So pay amounts out of that separate bank account that will trigger forgiveness. So for instance, your paychecks should come out of that new bank account. Be sure you call your payroll provider, let them know that you've switched that over. I would absolutely suggest doing this. I think it'll make the tracking so much easier for people. Pay your rent payments out of there, pay your utility payments out of that new bank account, so that you can really track and show where the flow of funds. The other tip that that I think is really important is to tag each disbursement in your software. So for instance, there's a detail or a memo area when you enter your transactions into QuickBooks. I would put into that detail box PPP loan, or QuickBooks also has a feature that's called classes. So you could set that up so that it denotes that any funds spent out from the PPP funds, that it's able to print out a separate report for you to present to your lender or your bank after the 8-week period. So the fourth tip, and this is really important, has to do with owner compensation. I really suggest that you over document this. section. So employers, you can defer to your 2019 payroll records and payroll tax filings. What I mean by this is make sure you're looking at the same time period as 2019. So let's say that your funds were deposited into your bank account this morning. So look at May 1st, 2019, count out exactly 8 weeks and look at what you paid yourself. I would say it's definitely reasonable to add 10% to that for cost of living adjustment, but I wouldn't go crazy with this. I wouldn't give yourself a huge bonus at this time. In order for the loan to be forgivable, I think that you should really just be very careful with this. If you are self-employed, it's a little trickier. However, my suggestion would be to, look at your Schedule C from your, which is part of your Form 1040, look at line 31 on that Schedule C, divide it by 52, multiply by 8 to come up with your compensation for the 8 weeks. Again, I would say a reasonable cost of living adjustment is fine, just don't go overboard. Clearly things get more expensive, so if you paid yourself $3,600 a month in 2019, if you want to go up to $4,000, $4,200, I don't see that as unreasonable. If you're self-employed, you are going to want to either write yourself a check for every single week of the same amount or transfer the exact same amount weekly from your business to your personal account. I would over document this, put this as owner compensation so that this can be forgivable as well. If you are a member of an LLC or a partner in a partnership, make sure you're looking to the working partner's K1 from 2019 to determine the amount of owner compensation to pay out. And that would be in box 1 and box 4A of your 2019 Schedule K1. Finally, the 5th tip is just over document every single disbursement that comes out of those PPP funds. Again, separate bank account would be recommended. If you've never been to an IRS audit, just imagine the worst audit on the planet where the auditor is looking at every single receipt and questioning every single expense that you had. Keep in mind that ordinary and necessary business expenses are deductible, and the guidance that we've been given is that something that is deductible for business purposes, for tax purposes, would also be an expense, a qualified expense for PPP loan forgiveness. So make sure, again, that there's an 8-week period after that very first deposit into your bank account. Make sure that you are photocopying and keeping a separate binder with time cards for your employees. Make sure all your employees have W-4s, up-to-date W-4s. Make sure that you are taking copies of their payroll checks before you hand them out. Or if the employees get direct deposit, make sure you have proof of electronic payment to your employees. Make sure you have all your payroll journals and all your payroll reports in order. Again, like I said, 75% of the PPP needs to be spent on payroll costs. Therefore, you absolutely want to over document this area. Your non-payroll costs, you want to start gathering your actual rental lease, or if you have a building, make sure you have that contract showing that you owned the building prior to February 15th of 2020. Get this stuff together right now. You're not going to want to do it at the end of the 8-week period. Any utilities, anything, your phone, I don't ever print out my phone bills anymore. However, I would suggest downloading those. Cell phone bills, print those out, check in with your lender to see what sort of documentation that they will be looking for, because not all banks will be looking for the same documentation. I'm going to assume that it's going to be similar, but some banks might be pickier than others. If you have credit cards that you're paying, you want to include that interest on the credit cards for expenses that were charged prior to February 15th. Print out the credit card statements. Be sure you're showing that those charges were prior to February 15th. Any bank loan agreements that you have, just make sure that you have everything printed out and ready to go so that you're not scrambling at the last minute. If you're paying group health insurance, I would suggest printing out the electronic payment receipts or checks for your health insurance. If you are funding retirement plans, make sure you have a copy of your plan agreement. Make sure you have copies of the contributions, be it in electronic format or in check format. You will need to document both the date that you made payments and the amount of the payments, and you want to be showing it coming out of those PPP funds for the amounts to be forgivable. So my advice is to make a plan for your money before you actually receive it. If you have already received it, I would suggest sitting down this weekend, mapping it out for 8 weeks. If you need our assistance with this, we are here to help you. Please just give us a call at the office, 760-730-1817 to book a session. So I have a few other tips and best practices for the Paycheck Protection Program in order for it to be forgivable. So keep in mind that once you actually have the loan, I said it a few times, but again, I want to reiterate, you have 8 weeks to spend all of the money for it to be forgivable. You will want to use cash basis accounting, so make sure that you're running enough payroll during that 8-week period to qualify for forgiveness. So I would suggest taking whatever, let's say you got $40,000, take 75% of it and make sure that you're allocating that the paychecks get cut and your employees, and that you get paid before the end of the 8-week period, even if you need to move your payroll date into the 8-week period at the very end, because keep in mind those last 2 weeks would not be paid within the 8-week period, they'd be paid later. If you quote unquote need to work some overtime, make sure that that's getting put into there as well. I know for my business, we are working so many hours processing returns, trying to help clients get loans, interpreting new tax code, doing business coaching. So really think about what you can be doing right now in order to generate enough hours so that you can actually have forgiveness on your payroll costs in this PPP loan. If you have furloughed employees, or if you put yourself on unemployment, make sure that you quickly rehire yourself and restate all of your employees to their full head count and compensation levels before June 30th. It's not contingent on the person. It's not, so if, for instance, you have someone who, because of childcare issues, can't come back to work for you, you can rehire someone else to fill their position. Just make sure that if you did have, let's say, 6 employees as of February 15th, that you have 6 employees and that you're paying the same amount of payroll that you were back in February. Be sure you're documenting everything. I can't say it enough. And the government's considering any funds that are spent on non-qualified expenses to be fraudulent. So you definitely want to be careful with how you're spending this money. Keep the 75-25% rule in mind as you spend your money. And be sure that you are reaching out to your financial institution, the lender, to confirm what documentation they are going to require in order for you to qualify for forgiveness. And then be sure that you're also partnering with your payroll provider. I would give them a call, carve out a plan, get your payroll set up so that the checks are actually issued and cashed within the 8-week period, starting the day after you receive your PPP funds. The government is considering full-time employees a minimum of 30 hours a week. And like I said before, it isn't specific to the individual, so you can rehire a different individual if one of your employees can't come back to work at this time. I wanted to touch on how much you should pay yourself just one more time. I know that we already covered this in one slide, but I just felt it was really important to reiterate that we really want to just be careful with this section. If you're the owner of the business, again, like I said, make sure you're looking to 2019's compensation. And I've outlined here in the slides, if you're an S Corp shareholder, make sure you're looking at your 2019 W-2s. If you're a partner or a member of LLC, make sure you're looking at your Schedule K-1s. And if you're a sole proprietor, be sure you're looking to your Schedule C, line 31 from 2019. And if you haven't filed 2019 yet, look to 18 at this time, upload what you can. If they are still looking for documentation, if the bank is asking for stuff from you, But I would suggest getting your 2019 return filed as soon as your accountant can do that. So a couple other questions people have asked me this week is, well, what if I don't spend the money on qualified expenses? So the government will require that you pay the money back. However, it's at a 1% interest rate, and my understanding is that you do have 2 years to pay the funds back, but the payments are deferred 6 months from the time that you do receive the funds in your bank. So my understanding of the timeline is funds are deposited into your bank account. You have 8 weeks from the day after you receive the funds to spend the money on qualified expenses. Then you submit your documentation to the bank on how you spent the money. The bank has 60 days to decide how much of that loan will be forgiven. And then if there is any amount that you have to pay back, either A, you have to pay it back over a 2-year period at a 1% interest rate, but the interest will start accruing from the first day that you receive the money in your bank account. So be sure you're contacting your lender now or as soon as you do receive the funds so that you can get your documents in order so that you can be granted that loan forgiveness. One other thing that did come up this week, the IRS finally did issue some guidance regarding the PPP loans. It's notice 2020-32, I believe. So they have stated that there will be no deduction, no taxable deduction for expenses that is paid by your PPP debt that's forgiven. So basically this makes sense, right? So the government's going to give you money. You're going to spend it on expenses. If it's forgiven and you don't have to pay it back and you don't have to include that amount in taxable income, then you can't take a write-off for it. So just keep that in mind. You'll definitely want to work with your accountant to make sure that you're booking this in your payroll software correctly, that you're booking this in your QuickBooks correctly if you use QuickBooks, so that you can actually identify the amounts that were PPP expenses so that we don't deduct them on your 2020 tax return. The good news is that that PPP loan forgiveness is not going to be included in your taxable income. So for instance, if you get a $20,000 PPP loan and the bank says it's all forgiven, that $40,000, you don't have to include that as income. But again, you don't get to deduct the expenses. My biggest advice to you right now is start planning for the future, get organized. You definitely want to have everything in order once you receive those funds. So just some basic bookkeeping and accounting tips for you. We love according files here at the office. If you have small receipts, it's a great place for you to corral all of those. You can label them, supplies, meals. A lot of us aren't going out to eat anymore, but gas receipts, we're not driving a lot, but once things start opening back up, you definitely want to save those small receipts in an accordion file. Just label it 2020 receipts. A 3-ring binder is excellent. I know that a lot of people receive their bank statement electronically these days. I would suggest saving it as a PDF and printing it out for 2020. Same thing with your payroll records and any other receipts and sheets that are the 8x11 size. Organize them by category and or by month. Typically, category is the way that I would do it, but for purposes of the PPP loan, I would probably put them in just an 8-week, date order, just so they can go through there and look at everything. Make sure that you're making copies of any checks before you send them and or print out the PDF images from your bank website once they've been canceled. And then print out and save copies of any receipts or electronic transfers for your accounting. You definitely are going to want to have those things handy, not only just for tax purposes, but also for PPP purposes. So reach out to us at Elm. We can help you make a plan to get organized. We can help to brainstorm with you to make a shift of your business. Come up with some things that you're good at, things that you're passionate about, see where those intersect, and really help you make a plan. So things to start doing right now, if you haven't already done so, is make sure you've set up your business and set up your accounting software correctly. Clean up your financials before you get too far into the year. Some businesses are slower right now, so this is a great time to do this. And then the second thing is make sure you plan how you're going to spend your loan proceeds before you receive them. And then if you don't have a payroll system or a payroll provider, make sure that you shop around, compare the different payroll systems, see what might work best for your business, and then make sure you're hiring someone to take care of your payroll for at least the next 90 days. So you have great reports for the banks. And then finally, work with your tax advisor to finish up your 2019 taxes. I know a lot of CPAs have been absolutely overwhelmed and have put tax season kind of on hold for the last 6 weeks because we've been busy answering questions. I did a call around my community of CPAs yesterday and checked in with people to see how they're doing, and they're in the same boat. Everyone has been just giving advice to clients the past 6 weeks, so we're hoping to get back to doing tax returns. So if you haven't finished up your return yet, I would suggest give your tax advisor a little bit of breathing room. I'm sure that they know that you want your tax return done as soon as possible. And then finally, make a plan for the remainder of 2020. If you don't have a personal or business spending plan for the year, you probably want to get one in place right now. I had a really great meeting with a client where we looked at their business expenses, we looked at their personal expenses, we made some really tough decisions as to, let's not pay, these bills right now, but let's pay these other bills right now, and looked at, cash flow, because cash flow is really where it's at right now. My advice regarding, your mortgages, I've heard all sorts of things about, you can apply for forbearance. If you are looking at doing any sort of cash out refi of your mortgage, you probably don't want to do a forbearance right now, but do check in with your individual lenders of your mortgages to see what's available for you. And then finally, just use your resources. Call your other business partners, your referral partners. Check in with your local Chamber of Commerce. Become a member of the Chamber. They're providing so many resources and they're advocating for businesses now more than ever. As I mentioned at the very beginning of the call, I do know that the City of Carlsbad is offering 0% or potentially offering 0% loans for small business owners up to $10,000 and then 2% up to $25,000. So I would really lean into your community, talk to your accountant, make a plan for the future. So I'm going to open it up now to your questions. Please, if you would like to unmute yourself, this is your opportunity. I will take as many questions as you have.
Rachel, this is Scott. How you doing?
Hi, Scott. Nice to hear you.
Good. Thank you. Nice to hear you. The coffee's finally kicked in, so I wanted to share something with you, if I may.
Please.
I had one of my agents. She was struggling trying to fill out. She got stuck on registering with EDD for the PUA.
Okay.
So she reached out and called, and I believe connected with the San Marcos office.
Oh, great.
She had to wait online for a little while,
Okay.
but they did actually pick up, and she explained the challenge. She couldn't get past the whatever it was, the initial setup. So they helped walk her through it, and
Wow.
even walked her through filling out the whole application and got things rolling for her.
Great. That's really good advice. Do you have that phone number available?
Yes, I do.
Wonderful.
I can share that.
Want to share that in the chat?
Yes, I can do that. I'll cut and paste and put it in there.
Thank you.
Because, yeah, she said just be patient, but they are there, they are available, and they are trying to help. So
That's really great. So for those of you on the call, the PUA is Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, which is a separate program which was authorized under the CARES Act. And it is specifically for self-employed individuals, independent contractors that typically would not have qualified for unemployment insurance benefits. So thank you, Scott. That was really great information.
by all means. And a second thing, I had watched a webinar with a representative from Freddie Mac earlier this week. They are usually Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, or the government agencies. A lot of the
Hey, Scott, we lost you.
Yeah, I was like,
Hi, Janet. Do you have a question for me?
I don't think so. I think you've answered everything. You were
Oh, good.
okay with my numbers and everything.
Yes. I think that it's absolutely reasonable.
The only thing that I have a question about, like, I don't have the money and it's May, but I don't have any income for the end of April. Can you pay for dates that you don't have the money actually in the account? Like, I was going to change my pay period in ADP to April 20th to May 15th so that when I did a paycheck at the end of May instead of mid-May, it could be a full month versus half a month is what I was trying to. So that way I'll get more.
I think it's fine. I think it's fine if you get more money in May. That's fine. You can't, so for instance, I have payroll that's due today, paychecks that will be going out to my employees. But we are not funded yet. So if they cash their checks today, then I can't include that. Now, I believe if they hold their checks until next week and those checks get cashed next week, because we use cash basis accounting, it's when the money actually clears the account.
Yeah.
But I think that would, now I have to check with Chase Bank, because for instance, if I have no money in my bank account and my employees can't cash their paychecks because of that until the money is in the account from the loan, I think that would definitely.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable, right?
Sounds reasonable to me. Again, check with your lender. My biggest piece of advice.
Well, my lender is funny because they're like, we don't really know anything about this forgiveness thing, but we're looking into it. They're like, we'll give you money and we'll charge you interest, but we're not really sure what that means. So I'm just going on faith right now.
No fun.
And I'm just going to wonky the paychecks. I've always paid myself one time in May for everything I did in April. However, I don't want to pay myself May 15th when half of it there was not. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like it's going to be wonky. So I'm going to move it to the end of the month and try to capture 30 days.
That's fine. I think that's absolutely fine.
Okay. All right. I'm going to leave though, but thank you.
You're welcome. Nice to see you, Janet.
Thank you.
So Rachel, like our employees all get paid today
Okay.
and they're all direct deposit.
Okay. Have you been funded?
Yes.
Okay.
Just like Monday.
Excellent. Congratulations.
But thank you. But now I'm like, obviously I didn't set up a bank account yet. I mean, I'm going to do that like right now, but will this pay period today be included?
I think so. I would just.
I mean, and I guess it's okay if it's not, because I think we'll be okay either way, but.
They're merely suggesting that you open a separate bank account. I don't think it's a requirement.
I actually think it would work well for me. I mean, it will be a lot of work, but I think that I'll feel better about it all just in one spot.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I would, my suggestion is, Angie, to just document the date that you received the loan, document the date, you know, and then print out your bank statement and show those transfers to employees, and then print out the payroll journal, show the matching. Here's the money coming out of the bank account. Here's my payroll journal. So you actually can show that the funds hit this day. You know, 6 days later, we paid our first payroll to our employees at their full rate of pay. And therefore, I don't see why that would be a non-forgivable expense.
Okay. And then real quick on the W-4s.
Yes.
So up to date, I was under the impression that if they were hired in 2019, you could, and they still work for us, you don't have to go in and update them because there's that whole new form. But anyone we've hired since then, is that correct?
Yes. Okay. I would go back into 2019 and have copies of your W-4s and time cards. Just have those handy. Because.
Or should I have everybody fill out new ones? I mean.
I don't see any reason to fill out new ones.
Okay.
In fact, having W-4s from 2019 shows that you were paying them a year ago.
Okay.
So it legitimizes that you are a legitimate business, you have a very high payroll, and that you've had these people, you know, this loan and the loan forgiveness had, you know, Corona not happened or COVID not happened, you would be business as usual. So I would suggest, I just know that there are companies that their W-4s, you know, maybe they hired someone new and they don't know where the W-4s are, or they hired someone 5 years ago and have no idea where they are. So instead of scrambling at the last minute to gather those, I would say
I'll just double check them all.
And my experience, I don't know if the banks are going to be like IRS auditors, but when you go into the IRS audit and you come in with more documentation and super organized, you get in and out of that process so much quicker than if you come in and you're scattered and you have things all over the place. I would make it clear enough for like a third grader to understand it.
Okay. So going along with that, you also mentioned something about some of the employment taxes or something like that aren't included. What were you, federal or?
So since out of your employees' paychecks, they have federal tax withholding.
Okay.
So any of that you have to keep in mind will not be forgiven.
So will the payroll company help me with that? Like, how do I back that out of my payroll? Because otherwise I'm just gonna,
you don't want to back
my whole payroll.
Yeah, you don't want to back it out of your payroll. Just keep in mind that that's a portion of the loan that may not be forgiven.
Okay, so it's the federal that the employees.
The federal tax that gets withheld out of an employee's paycheck.
Okay. Tax withheld. I just want to make sure that when I calculate my payroll of like what I'm projecting it's going to be in the next 8 weeks, that I'm doing it correctly.
Correctly, yes, absolutely. And then my understanding is also the payroll costs that you as the employer pay, the Social Security, Medicare, that is your portion, that doesn't count towards payroll costs.
Okay.
So let's say your payroll's, I don't know, $15,000 for one payroll run, and you've got, you know, $3,000 in employee taxes. I don't think you can include those. Now, my understanding is that the state taxes are payroll, they are qualified expenses.
So that's kind of confusing.
It's very confusing. So my advice to you, Angie, is just do your payroll business as usual from a separate bank account, and then work with your pay to determine how best to account for it.
Okay. I just don't want to.
You work with ADP?
I work with pay.
You want to muck it up?
Sure, payroll. It's paychecks.
Okay.
And they're I'm fine. I'll reach out to them, but I just want to make sure my projections are correct.
Yeah.
Because if I just take our weekly payroll right now, there's probably a portion of that I shouldn't be including, obviously, right?
Yes, that is absolutely correct. Because
Okay.
there's a portion of those that are not deductible.
Okay.
Forgivable.
Right.
They'll still be deductible. They won't. So that's I mean, keep that in mind. So it won't be forgiven, but at least you can deduct it. And so in essence, it will almost be a wash. Because you'll get the loan funds, but then you'll deduct the expense.
Okay.
I mean, the main goal of the PPP is to keep people on payroll and have them not go on unemployment.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a good thing, because I've heard that unemployment fund is running out in about 3 weeks.
Yikes.
I know. Which is why I really feel strongly, and you weren't on, I don't know if you were on the call where I was talking about shifting our businesses and really thinking about, you know, what can we do with our businesses and making a plan for, well, what if this is a long-term thing, and what if, you know, there's a lot of what ifs here.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been working with a lot of clients, encouraging them to look at what skills you have, what can you sell online, what skills do you have that you can offer online, or, you know, what sort of essential business can you get into with your skill set at this point, so that in case there is another stay-at-home order that, you know, goes on long-term, that you can generate income.
Right, right.
I mean, we can't all be farmers, but, you know.
Yeah. I was trying to think. Oh, and then you also mentioned phone, and so cell phone is, I didn't even think about cell phones.
And I know you're in an essential business.
Right now,
I would
yeah.
check with your lender, but according to everything, all the guidance that I've been reading from IRS and from the SBA, what I've been hearing is that they consider anything that's a deductible expense for tax purposes will be considered an eligible expense as long as it falls into the category of the rents, the interest, and utilities, and the payroll costs. So this is notice 2020-32 that I'm looking at right now. You can find that on IRS talk about. It's a 7-page document. It's called notice 2020-30 worth a read. If you want the link, I can send it to you.
Okay.
But it just talks about any otherwise deductible expenses incurred in taxpayers' trade or business will be allowed. So, and this also does go into some kind of heady discussion about what is deductible under the Paycheck Protection Program. So I can provide that resource to anyone who's interested. If you would like to read through it, it'll probably take you about, I don't know, half an hour to read through the entire document.
Okay. Well, actually, I
It's not
forgot you mentioned equipment, so I think we'll be fine.
Yeah, leases. If you have leases, you can, but be sure that you have those contracts
What if
available.
we just rent it?
That's perfect. Do you have sort of a rental agreement for it?
I think we do, because we pretty much use one company, and we have them weekly.
Right.
So
Yes. So keep
okay.
in mind, only 20% can go towards that.
Right.
So
Right.
that would be a really nice compromise. So for instance, 75% is allocated to payroll costs,
Mhm.
and then 25% to either rents or interest or utilities. What I would look at, if you also did receive the EIDL advance, you want to be really, did you receive that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I got to keep that separate.
You want to keep that separate, and you want to look at, okay, if I received, you know, $10,000 over here, maybe I'm paying my lease or rent payments out of that funds. I'm paying utilities and interest and payroll costs out of the other funds, and even maybe setting up where the money's going.
I don't know if it's my internet, but you're kind of cutting out. With that 10,000, so we got that. We, filled out everything for that loan. Now, is there a possibility of getting more from that too? Like, I almost don't want to.
Well, I have one client who applied for both. They received both. They received $25,000 from the SBA, and $10,000 was the advance.
Okay.
And then $15,000 was a loan, and then they received $86,000 for the PPP. So
Okay.
I've been with them to make a plan. How do we spend the SBA money? How do we spend PPP money? Because you want to make sure that you're keeping two sets of books for those, and then you've got your operating, expenses as well. And then you have to have some sort of system in place so that at the end of the year, for tax purposes and for accounting purposes, you have a profit and loss and balance sheet that ties everything together.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not suggesting opening 3 bank accounts. For the PPP, I would absolutely suggest opening a separate account. For the EIDL, I would just suggest tagging it, or you use QuickBooks, make sure you're using classes and just tag it EIDL so that you know where that money went.
Okay. I think I can get started on all this. I'll probably set up a time to talk to you, I don't know, just specifically about our situation. Maybe in like the next week or two.
Great.
But I can get started on all this. I think I have a more clear.
And more guidance will come out, like
Okay.
this notice 2020-32 just was issued where, I don't think anyone had really thought of the fact that, oh, well, if I spend this money on, and it gets forgiven, the loan gets forgiven, I don't get to deduct it. That's probably something that never crossed, anyone's mind. So the IRS will be coming out with additional guidance. The SBA will be coming out with additional guidance. So, where I go for my information, I go to irs.gov. They post their notices on there. Go to SBA. They've got really good information. And then Department of Labor has some really good information as well. But, like I suggested, if you're not a member of the, Chamber of Commerce, I've really seen the Chamber of Commerce, especially Carlsbad, has stepped up and has provided a lot of really good resources over the past, few months. Thanks for being on the call.
Yeah, I'm glad I was able to get on. Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome. Does anyone have any other questions? Looks like we're done. All right, well, have a great weekend, everyone, and thank you for being on the call today.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Rachel.
Rachel.
You're welcome. Bye, Nina.
Bye.